Welcome to the Impactful Engineer Project. I'm Steve Maxey, and with my co-host and brother Jake, we are here to bring you guidance, fresh ideas, and the tools to help you become an impactful engineer.
Welcome to the Impactful Engineer. Our mission is to help you grow your engineering career and inspire you to pursue your full potential, not just as an engineering professional, but as a member of your greater community. I'm Jake Maxey. I own and operate NLS Engineering, an electrical engineering partner in the AEC industry, and I'm here with my brother Steve. He's a mechanical engineering manager in new product development. That's who we are, and that's what we're trying to do. What's up, Steve?
Hello, Mr. Jacob. A little housekeeping before we get started here. Our most common episode type is Jake and I having a conversation where we introduce the why and the how around a topic that is important to your career growth. And we'll add our own perspective to offer guidance to inspire you to take immediate action. Occasionally, we have a quick 5 to 10 minute solo episode that immediately gets down to the point on a concept that is top of mind for us that we believe is critical to growing your career. And finally, about once or twice a month, we will have our long format episode where we bring in expert guests to share their perspective, mindset, and actionable tips around their area of genius. And today, we are excited to have an impactful guest on to dive into an often misunderstood topic that is almost always associated with technical-minded engineers. He's also an author, blogger, and the host of the Quiet and Strong podcast. So welcome to the show, David Hall.
All right. Thanks, Steve and Jake, for having me. You have a great podcast. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, me
Heck
too.
Yeah. Especially Steve, you introverted engineer.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. Before we dive into our main topic, please share some insight into your story for our audience.
Yeah, and it dives into the main topic. So I definitely, as an introvert, there's a lot of misunderstandings around it. And at one point in my life when I was younger, I felt like something was wrong with me. And I hear that from many of the guests I have on the show, many people I talk to, but not everybody. I happen to be married to an introvert, and she has just always been confident, and that's been good for me to see. So anyway, I'm feeling like something's wrong with me. Like, why can't I be more like that person? Why can't I be more comfortable in conversation or in public speaking or those types of things? And I also had a desire to be impactful, to really help people and change their lives. And I'm like, what's wrong here? How can I fix this? And so I got a degree in psychology, and was moving along, getting to know a little bit more about personality and that type of thing. I wasn't there yet though. And then I got a master's in counseling. And, one of the professors I had said, the introversion was often very misunderstood. And I related very much to that. But the big turning point for me was at work. I was going through a training, getting certified in the Myers-Briggs. And we can talk about that a little bit later too. But, the facilitator said, introverts think and then speak, and extroverts generally think out loud. And I was like, wow, that was like an epiphany moment for me. About the same time, I was getting trained to be a facilitator for the Clifton Strengths. And Clifton Strengths isn't about introversion, extroversion, but it's about naturally occurring gifts. So this combination and me teaching it really helped me to understand you're an introvert. You have great gifts. You're not going to change your introversion, but you can definitely be successful by understanding it and what you need. And the Clifton Strengths, it's basically there's 34 strengths. It shows you your top 5 so you can focus on your strengths, not worry so much about your weaknesses. And that just really helped me to see, yeah, I have gifts and they're different from somebody else's gifts, but if I can learn to use my own and honor what I need, and we'll definitely talk about strengths and needs today. If I can honor what I need, I can be very successful. And also, it's wonderful. I used to be shy. I used to lack confidence, But by the things we're going to talk about today, I overcame those things. I do a podcast. I think, over a couple hundred episodes. I don't get nervous. I love it. I love chatting with you today. And it's not an introvert thing. It's just if you don't understand your introversion, we'll get into that's where you can have a problem. It's not the introversion part that prevents me from being a podcast host. It's not understanding would prevent me. Yeah. And then meanwhile, I work in higher education, so really helping students find their path, find the courses and programs that'll get them to their path. Um, that job has kept me very busy, and then I also own a business with my wife, and that's kept me very busy. I have three
Mm-hmm.
kids. They're getting older now, so they're not keeping me as busy as they, as they used to. But
Yep.
so meanwhile, I'm studying introversion, and I'm also studying different resources like David Allen's Getting Things Done. I'm studying different resources about time management, productivity, and I'm realizing that there's things about being an introvert when it comes to productivity and time management that aren't being called out in these books. So that was my first book, Minding Your Time, Time Management and Productivity, especially for introverts. And, because it's just a different approach. There's things I need as an introvert that are different from the extrovert, and that's just so important to acknowledge. And so that was the first book, and
Nice.
then I'm working on the second one. Hopefully this fall it will be out.
So yeah, you went nuclear.
Yeah.
You're like, man, how do I figure this out? Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
psychology, let's go. Master, yeah, let's figure this out too. Let's take the next step. Let's write a
yeah,
book. And that's just awesome. I love going nuclear. That's what I do. So
yeah.
We know.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, what actually led you to start the podcast itself?
Yeah, yeah. So it's 2020, and there's a lot of myths going around like, oh, introverts are loving this, just staying home all the time. And there was a lot of myths going around. Like, I think probably it was easier for introverts to be staying home, but it was still not everybody was just happy. Uh, I was home with my wife and my three kids, and she's always worked from home, and she's an introvert and she needs some quiet. And so now we're all in her space. Two of my kids got moved to online school, which they hated. So it was just a really stressful time. So there's lots of things going around like, oh, introverts are just so happy. And I'm like, there's some isolated introverts. I'm missing my family and other family and friends. I love the four others that are here at the house, but there's other people that I'm missing. And so World Introvert Day happens every January 2nd. And so I thought, you know what? January 2nd, 2021, that would be a good time to launch the podcast to really give voice to some of these things. And I had a lot to say, so I did like 40 solo episodes.
Wow.
And then I
Amazing.
started having guests, and so I mostly have guests. I do a solo episode every 1 or 2 months, and it's been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of great people like yourself that are really trying to do great things, and just it might be introvert experts. It might be an introvert, but they have something powerful to share. They're not an introvert expert, but they are an introvert. We can talk about that. And sometimes we don't talk about it at all. Somebody just has something powerful to share.
Mhm.
Yeah, did you start with 40 pre-recorded and launch with that? Or you just jumped in and just did 40 in a
Uh,
row?
yeah, I did 40 in a row. I probably
Nice.
had a couple ready to go.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and like just arming people with the toolkit, um, with as much knowledge as possible, to put in their toolkit. It's like that's what we're trying to do. I feel like that's what you're trying to do too, is like there is no one way, but there is a lot to learn about certain aspects of people's personality, their lives, their upbringing, what they feel, think, that you can take and it's just like the strengths, the Clifton strengths, find out what they are so that you can amplify the ones that will help you the most, right? Because you could be just thinking and putting energy in the wrong direction or on the wrong things, or thinking you know you have certain thoughts about who you are and how you act, and it's like you're gonna try and amplify things that really aren't gonna. You have hidden strengths that you could be spending energy on. Um, so that's what I think we're trying to do with the show too. So I think that's awesome.
Hey, my fellow impactful engineers. If there's one thing that you could do to help out this community, it's to keep listening to the podcast, but also, if you found value in it, to share it with one person, give us a 5-star review, or even leave a text review. It'll only take a few seconds of your time. Find that person that you think could enjoy some of this or learn from it, and pass on the good word. Now back to the show.
Yeah, and introversion is misunderstood, and it's really that we're internal processors. Often I hear this definition that the main difference is how we get our energy. Introverts charge alone, and extroverts charge with people. And there's some truth in there, but it's lacking
Yeah.
because it's really what's our strengths. If I only say I'm an introvert because I need to recharge, what about all my strengths that I have?
Hmm.
Or we need time alone to recharge, but we also need time alone for lots of things. We need time alone to
Mm-hmm.
think, to focus. We also do like people, so that's a myth that we'll bust today. It's kind of crazy. There's only like a very small percentage of the population, like 1%, that don't like people. So it's not introverts. It's
Right.
just that we might like different situations. We like to go deeper in our conversations. We might not like the traditional networking event where we bounce around, but we could come up with a strategy for that and have some really
Hmm.
good conversations. So it's really, we're deep thinkers, but great strengths come from deep thinkers, and problem solving, coming up with creative innovations, because we're able to spend some time in our heads and think about these things. So,
Yeah.
and we need everybody. We need introverts and extroverts. We
Mhm.
just need to understand each other.
Yeah, and I think introverts have they're very empathetic, right? And they can really build deep connections with people, and they can leverage that in learning how to uh, collaborate and how to work with other people, whether they're introverts or extroverts, because they are able to really find what drives other people and then lean into that.
Yeah, a gift I think is pretty common. And again, not all introverts have the same gifts, but I think a pretty common one is that we are keen observers. So we do see what's going on and think, you know what? Why I can solve this particular thing. Why is no one talking about this thing that's not working?
Mm-hmm. When we talked before, you know, you're big on debunking the status quo of who people think introverts are, and one of them was that quiet does not equal shy, right? That you wanted to. I think we came to the conclusion that we wanted to define introversion, or at least set a basis of a definition that for which we could then communicate from. And I think we came up with. It is probably in your book and your materials, but it was like a mode of processing, and that was like the biggest one. It was like it's what is the mode of processing? Did I get that right? And can you tell us
Yeah.
a little more about that?
Yeah. So it's that we are internal processors. So I hear introvert, and so why does it matter? Okay.
Yeah.
It matters because um, if it's something that I'm very familiar with, I may not need to pause and think. Okay. Um, if you start telling me about your particular areas of engineering, and you're asking me questions, I might not know, and I may need to pause and think. But something else I find is that people are so interested in the label, like, am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? Am I don't use the term, but some people say ambivert, which means in the middle. And it's not about that. It's helpful to know if you're an introvert or extrovert so you can then say, okay, I need to think first. So before that meeting, I need to prepare. I need to look up some things. I need to write down the questions that I have. So it's not about so much the label. It's really about, what does that label mean, and what does it mean for me? What do I need? And so often people say, introverts are shy, and I hear it used incorrectly all the time. I was in a training and someone said something like, well, maybe your people aren't talking to you because they're introverts. I'm like, no, use the right word. It's maybe they're shy, but you can overcome shyness, is what I'm saying. And there's
Mm-hmm.
lots of causes for shyness, but in my case and many cases that I've heard, sometimes if you don't understand introversion, you can be shy. So if I'm thinking and then speaking, and you're thinking out loud at me, and maybe I'm in a group where everybody is thinking out loud, and then someone says the dreaded, why are you so quiet? you can feel shy. You can lack confidence, you know? And it's really about, and I know some very outspoken and confident introverts, they're deep thinkers, but they know how to use their gifts. And so they're not shy, but I don't call anything extroverted. So me being on a podcast doesn't mean I have to tap into my extroversion. It just means I tap into my introversion, and that's something that I'm big on.
Yes, something I noticed kind of throughout my career is when I start a new job and I don't know the subject matter of that role, I'm like incredibly just um observational, right? I soak in everything, and I don't speak a lot, like out in meetings, etc. And it usually takes me, a little while to become like a subject matter expert in that role. But then once I do, then I'm jumping into meetings, and I'm having strong conversations, leading topics, et cetera, et cetera. And then, if you were just an outsider looking in, if you look at Steve when the first 60 days of being in a new role, you'd be like, wow, that guy's super quiet and he doesn't really like jump in and blah blah blah. And then you look at Steve a year in, you're like, wow, that guy's like taking charge and doing all this stuff, and he really knows what he's talking about. So do you think that is just a typical way that introverts kind of go through their first year of their careers, or am I hitting that wrong?
It could be. I experienced that for sure. And my supervisor said, "Oh, you didn't used to talk." But have either of you been through that experience where someone's new and they think they know everything
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to change the world and they don't know why you're doing what you're doing, and
Yep.
that's really frustrating too. So, advice I would give to someone in that situation where they're new is just really try to articulate that. Hey, you know what? I'm new. I'm going to try and take everything in, and so I can be my best here. I may not contribute as much as I will in the future. If you can articulate that, I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
So I don't. I'll be the extroverted think out loud guy because I'm
Okay.
not. I'm not afraid of doing that. But
Yep.
maybe I feel like the labels shouldn't exist almost. Like there's just certain behaviors. There's things that you have natural tendency towards, and then there's what do we want the result to be? Kind of is what I'm getting. And it's like, okay, so know yourself, know what the outcome will be if you do these certain things, and then in certain situations, maybe you change your behavior a little bit because maybe you know that the outcome will be different if you do. Because it seems like maybe we want to just like we want to know introvert and we want to know extrovert, and in our head we just want it to be one of those two categories so we feel good about like it's resolved. We know why someone behaves the way they do, or we know why we feel the way we do inside, or we know why we do certain things. It's like, okay, but if we don't have terms, we're like floating around and we're going, what's wrong with me? Like I'm getting a little
Yeah.
bit of that, and it's like I like what you're saying. It's like, hey, for a while it'll be this, and then you'll learn some things, and then it'll be this. You're still you through the whole thing. It's just now you're being kind of like labeled, I guess, differently at different times because you're exhibiting different behavior, but you're still the same
Yeah.
person the whole time. I don't know. Thinking out loud here.
Hey, I like it. And it really is getting to know your strengths, and different assessments like the Myers-Briggs that says I'm an introvert can help you understand and give you some things to think about. So it can be useful if you really dive into it. If you just take an assessment like that and say, "Oh, I'm an introvert or an extrovert," and you don't do anything with it, it's not going to be that helpful to you. But it can really help you think about some things. And you take something like that, it'll give you long descriptions and tell you, different areas, how you work. I also like the Myers-Briggs because it goes into other aspects of our personality. So there's like
Mm-hmm.
4 letters. And so the first one, of course, is introvert, extrovert, so I or E. And then the next one is N or S, and N for intuition because the I's already taken, and then sensing. And that's something important to understand too, because just in a nutshell, the intuition is your more big picture thinking. Things are coming to you intuitively, which is a gift. The sensing person is going to really want to see the details, and we're going to have both people on our teams, and they're both gifts. You need the big picture, you need the details, and you need everything in between. And again, if you don't understand that, and I remember I trained one time two people at the same time. One was big picture, one was details, and the stuff they wanted to know was so different, you know. And it's important to know. And the next one is thinking versus feeling, and
Hmm.
you know, you're thinking, and that's a T or an F. You're approaching life more logically. With the feeling, you're actually feeling other people's feelings. And I'm an INTJ, so I I'm not feeling other people's feelings. I was in a training, and some of the best times of talking about this stuff are in the kind of workshop environment, 30-ish people sitting around tables of 5 or 6, and you
Hmm.
describe your strengths to each other. And so this person that I knew pretty well said that her number one Clifton strengths was empathy. I'm like, oh, okay. And she started telling me about how she felt the feelings of others. I'm like, huh, that's not happening for me, you know? And I tell that story and people say, "Oh, you don't care about people." I'm like, "No, I do. It's just if I'm trying to help you, I'm like, what's it like to be Steve?
Mhm.
Like what's Steve going through?" It's a more of a logical thing. So I do definitely deeply care about people, but it's a different approach.
um, when people are listening to this, I'm assuming this is not a black and white for each one of those, right? You're not like one or the other. It's more like, do you have maybe 60% of your being is this way and 40% is that way, etc. Right? Like, I don't want people to think that like, oh, if I'm more of a logical thinker, that means I have zero empathy.
I think that's what we're trying to break here
Yeah.
today. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, they're just tools.
Hmm.
They're things to think about. And like when you go through one of these things, the person that's facilitating something should have you validate, like read through this description. What applies to you? What doesn't apply to you? So yeah, and it's not we as human beings, we like to make things simple. We like to categorize, like, okay, that person's introvert, that person's an extrovert. I mean, I'm definitely an introvert, but uh, there's lots of different aspects to my personality.
Yeah, yeah. Like don't stop there, you know. There's more to know and to what degree and to how far are you into this, what is your natural tendency here within the introvert um I guess kind of definition. But
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just to finish off the Myers Briggs, the last letters are J, which means judgment, which doesn't mean judgment like you might think of it, and perceiving. And it really means like I'm an INTJ, and so I tend to like things organized and scheduled. Um, this is the only letter that me and my wife differ on, and so perceiving is more free and spontaneous. And I just really real, and we're happily married. Okay, I've realized that no amount of I'm not going to make her more into a scheduled person, even if I tried. But that's part of understanding and respecting that gift makes us happy. And, I definitely tend to worry more as, trying to get everything scheduled. She's good for me in that manner where, she definitely makes things easier. Um, I say I'd like to think I bring order to her life, but if she was here, she probably wouldn't agree. But
It's the yin and the yang.
yeah, it really is. It really
Yeah.
is. It's important.
So a common theme in like the engineering and probably most professional scenarios is that the introverts will not really participate in meetings. They'll just kind of sit in the corner and just listen and not speak up. So I kind of want to go into like what are some tools or practices that people who feel that they're a little more on the introverted side can deploy in meetings to be more heard and even develop into impactful leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so important for us to understand the value of preparation, whether it's the meeting, even some conversations, presentations, public speaking. We do our best with preparation. I mean, and you do your best preparation, and then we're not perfect either, but you do your best preparation, you know. And it's important for leaders to provide, or the meeting organizer provide an agenda ahead of time so the introverts can check it out. What are we going to be talking about? Do I fully understand this topic? Do I need to do more research? Do I need to talk with some people around me? Um, or do I have questions? And I kind of make myself just a little agenda beforehand, like writing down the points I want to make, and also the questions I might have. Um, I will say that the goal is to participate in the meeting, you know, and if you can, make your voice heard as soon as you can, so that I have something to say. Um, it does need to be okay in most situations, though, to participate after, to let people, if they have something that they want to contribute after. But to me, that's not the goal. The goal is let's try to have this conversation, make these decisions while the meeting's happening.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah, and
well, I was going to say,
go ahead, Steve.
I think earlier in the meeting is better, right? Because it looks like you're being more proactive and engaged in the meeting. Even if you say something in the first 5 minutes, and then the rest of the 30-minute meeting, you don't say anything, and you're just kind of writing notes and soaking everything else in. But because you participated earlier on, then people aren't going like looking across the room and be like, oh, Steve hasn't said anything yet. Steve hasn't said anything yet. They are like, oh, Steve already said
Perception.
something, but and Jake already said something, and David already said something. Okay, so these guys are good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Perception thing, like, and then in the first 5 minutes, then you're sitting there and doing what you would have done if you'd never said anything, but then the people are assuming, oh, just taking notes. If there was something to be said, it would be said, kind of a thing. And then I wanted to jump back just real quick for like a tactical thing. It's like you get to ask the meeting organizer, or I mean, it's best when it's like your supervisor putting the meeting on. But whatever the relationship is, you get to ask or tell them, hey, I'm working on participating more actively in meetings. Anywhere in your meeting agenda that you could fit it in, maybe you look over, give me a nod or something, I'll jump in. Whatever allows you to participate early, or do the thing that David was talking about earlier, whatever gets you there, you're allowed to plan and strategize and ask people to help you get there too. It doesn't have to just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's good advice. Let the meeting organizer know, hey, I want to be sure to make this point, so they can call on you.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that hits on the needs that we'll get into, but I think that you were talking or alluding to earlier, David, is you get to talk about the needs and wants, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing is just, it's a constant, you got to build your reputation. You got to be the expert in what you're doing and be known as the go-to person. I had somebody on my show, I can't remember what her role was, but at the end of the meeting, the CEO would always turn to her and say, all right, what are you thinking? Because she had that reputation. Even though she hadn't said anything, he called on her because he knew she had some great thoughts because she had established that reputation.
and if you don't get an agenda at all on a meeting, because I can't count how many meeting invites I get that are literally just a meeting
It's
invite
probably
with like a
90%.
one-word
Yeah,
subject.
yeah,
Um, it is okay to email the administrator of that meeting, be like, hey, can I get a quick outline of what's going on so I can be prepared? You're not going to get any hate for that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
David, what is your experience with? Have you ever been in a position to where you're managing, I guess, basically yourself, introverts? And have you ever been in a position like that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
For
and I'm sure you have tons of things, tools you use and tactics and things. Maybe we share a little bit about bringing this to how this kind of correlates with our audience. It's like either someone's being managed and they're like a 0, 1, 2, 3 year engineer, working with a manager, or they've become the manager themselves and now they have direct reports. Like, what is it they can be doing in this relationship, to be, I guess, that yin and yang, or bring the best out of each other in the sense of introversion?
Yeah, it's really starts with understanding both your self-awareness and the awareness of, either your supervisor or those that you're supervising. It does take time to get to know people, but it's definitely worth it.
Hmm.
Getting to know what their strengths are, that if they're, like we were just talking about, if they're being quiet in the meeting, it doesn't mean they have nothing to say. They could lack confidence, and you can talk about that. You can talk about how they could speak up, or just really understanding where that person is coming from. So it really starts with, some self-awareness, and also just being aware of others, whether it's your supervisor or other people on your team, that, hey, you know what? I'm going to think out loud most of the time as an extrovert, and this person is going to think and share what they think is most important, and they're both good ways to contribute.
Yeah. And like in my experience, I can talk too much, right? So I always like to just open it up like, hey, I probably going to seem like I don't add a lot of room for interruption, or that I don't want people to interrupt, or that, well, whatever it is, like I want to own the room, whatever. So I'm just like, you have full authority to just like either physically raise your hand and be like, question, or hey, I got something for you. You can physically, verbally make it known that you want to interject, and I'll be like, okay, great, yeah, let's pause and let's get this communication going. And I find that just that simple move immediately opens up a ton of conversation where there otherwise wouldn't have been. Um,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know if you
important
guys
to
have had
let
that.
people, yeah, it's important to let people know that you do value their contributions. You do value their feedback. And, it definitely, we can sometimes take over the meeting, and we need to allow people to speak and find ways for each person to do that.
Yeah, I feel like there can be assumptions made. And so I would say verbalize your assumptions, you know. Uh, Try to over communicate even a little bit, especially if you're on the introverted side, I guess, if we're going to stick with that, because um, you're just increasing the opportunity to be heard, the surface area of getting your voice out there, you know, when you wouldn't, otherwise. So,
Yeah, and I think that the over communicate is something. So we talk a lot about leadership on the podcast, and introverts can be amazing leaders. It's just a different approach. But on the over communicate, we also, as introverts, have things so clearly in our heads because we're always thinking. And we sometimes make those assumptions. Well, this person knows what I feel about this. And we also tend to be a little more private too. And so we do need to do what you're saying and lean towards over communicating instead, really sharing that vision that we have, and not assume that people know what is so clear to us in our minds.
So I want to dive a little deeper into leadership as an introvert. What are some more like strengths that you can really just lean into as a leader of professionals?
Yeah. So strengths definitely, we're good at thinking. Maybe we're good at being strategic. Again, not every introvert's going to be exactly the same. We're good at reflection and really, taking time to think about things, spending some time on some ideas. Um, and we just need to get over that. It's the loudest that makes the best leader. And it's funny because we talk about
mm,
this a lot, and I don't even think most people want the loudest anymore.
I definitely feel the connection to the loudest being, because like growing up, for instance, right? In school, elementary, middle, high school for sure. Be the loud one, get all the attention, um, be seen as the person that's leading the group, right? That when you said that, I was like, that's actually very, very important. Um, get over, yeah. I wouldn't recommend being the loudest person to be the leader. For sure.
And a tactic that I've used on my teams is, because I am not the loudest person, but you always have someone on the team that is very strong willed and quote unquote loud. So it's really about partnering with that person to bring that dynamic when it's needed. In say like debated type meetings, or like strong meetings that you need someone to have a loud voice, like almost like on your behalf, but maybe not quite. Um, that seemed really effective in my time as being a manager of engineers. Is just having someone else on the team that is a strong voice that can be that uh, portion of the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And one thing on being the loudest, so my podcast is called Quiet and Strong, and quiet doesn't mean shy. And I kind of have a love hate relationship with the word. It doesn't mean shy, it just means I'm thinking more than I'm not. And again, I'm very confident now. I wasn't always. The one thing I kind of figured out, oh, all this all this planning and being strategic, it's not going to make you an extrovert. Like, you're going to speak as much as you want to, but you're never going to say as many words as the extrovert, is your extroverted friend or colleague. because you're going to think first generally and say that most important thing. So it's not that you're shy, it's just that you're thinking more often than not. And everybody thinks, everybody pays attention to what's going on around them. Just, the introvert's more focused on the inner world, the extrovert's more focused on what's going on around.
Yeah, and something I've also noticed is that when people know how you operate, even if you are introverted and you are a bigger thinker, they know that when you are speaking and commanding the room, that what you are saying has a lot of weight behind it. There's a lot of there's a lot of thought that goes behind what you're saying, and there's a lot of validity to what you're saying, and so people will take your information and run with it because they know it's been thoroughly vetted.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just quick story. That's where the name of my podcast came from. So back to it's been several years now that I did those Clifton Strengths facilitations, but I was being trained myself, and I'm in like a 3-day workshop. And in my head, again, I've become so much more confident. In my head, I'm just talking all the time, right? That's my perception of myself. I'm just talking all the time. But at the end of this 3 days, the facilitator pulled me aside and she said, "You're quiet and strong. And when you speak, people listen." And that was just like exactly what you're saying, Steve. It's like, oh, okay. And again, she perceived me as quiet, even though I thought I was talking a ton.
Mm. It's an it's something that I have noticed about myself is that because I talk a lot, but I'm doing a lot of thinking out loud, that it's something that I can work on because it's not a strength of mine to be very concise, the quiet and strong, because I've thought about a lot of this ahead of time and just deliver a short amount of words with high impact. Because I always feel like either I need to explain more, like I'm doing right now, or some other context. I'm like a context guy, right? So that's something that I'm trying to work on myself is either prep, try to find the words to communicate a little better about what I'm actually trying to say and the impact I'm trying to have, and bring it tighter, right? So I feel like that's something that Steve, you're my brother. I know you my whole life. You have more of an impact when you speak. Is what I'm trying to say. Like you formulate the words before, you're thinking about it before you let it out into the ether. So it's like, I will stop talking now because I think I made my point.
um, well, let's talk about your book a little bit, because the book is about you say minding your time, and it's about time management. What are the differences in strategies for introverts versus extroverts in time management? Because I'm actually really curious about that.
Yeah. So we've been talking about preparation. So you have to build that into your weekly time. Like, how am I going to prepare for things? You have to have time to think, time to focus. You got to build that in too. You do need to recharge. Certain things are draining. Certain things. Maybe you just gave a presentation. You had a great time. You made your points. It was awesome. But now you're wiped out, and you need to do some different kind of work or take a break. So you need to plan all of that in. And another thing, and this applies to everybody, is you gotta figure out what's most important, because I've tried to do it all, whether it's work and home, working, both. And you can't do everything. We're limited by time. And what's most important? You have to think about that. Like, what's going to be most impactful, and is there something that I'm doing that I can just stop doing? Is there something that somebody else should be doing? And so it's those kinds of things that, again, some of them apply to everybody, but some of them are specific, especially to introverts, where you really need to think about, all right, what time do I need alone? What time do I want to be with other people? What times do I need to collaborate with other people? So you just have to consider all that and really analyze, take a deep dive into this, set aside some time where you can really think deeply, and do that as often as you need, not just every January. Do it like once a month or whatever works for you, but then plan each week and, look at your week. Okay, what's going on? Do I need to just, and I don't know about you all, but at my work, people can plug stuff into my calendar. And so, like, what do I need to block off ahead of time so that I have that time to think and get this project done, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I utilize time blocking quite a bit, where I have just blocks of time throughout my week that are blocked on my calendar so people can't book it. And so I have time to kind of like, get ready for the next big part of the day. Um, do you think introverts think too much sometimes? Uh, and how can they prevent themselves from doing so?
Yeah, of course. And I think that it's more common. I think everybody can overthink things, but I think, we spend a lot of time in our heads naturally. So, yeah, we can. And at the same time, we have to get things done. So I always say, have an agreed upon deadline that's reasonable for you to give things some thought, because I can make quick decisions sometimes. Sometimes some of the bigger ones come with time. And I look back and think, oh, yeah, if I had rushed that one that turned out as well as it did. So, yeah, we can overthink. So, whoever you're working with, just establish a good deadline so you're not overthinking forever, but you're using your gifts and giving it some thought, like whatever that is.
This is going to totally make me old, but I was rewatching Criminal Minds, and this very thing, right? So Reed is this very thoughtful, can put together profiles like none other, and is this whiz, right? But thinks a long time, wants it to be better, 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 perfect, perfect before I present the profile. And then you've got Morgan, who's like the hot shot, running in there saying, "Oh, we have the profile before the profile is ready." Basically another FBI friend comes by and says, "Yeah, that profile is ready, right?" And before the words could come out, "Cool, great, thanks." And then we'll call it, So it's like it just reminded me of the overthinking thing. Like sometimes
Yeah.
you can just establish that schedule or have that buddy that says, "You know what? I think this is good enough at the moment."
And both are gifts, getting things going, getting things started. We need those people. We also need people to think about things, think about how to do things better or how to avoid problems. We need both. It's just you have to have an understanding. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
are they still making those Criminal Minds? They have
I'm not.
a lot of
I'm not sure.
seasons. I used to watch it
Yeah.
earlier, but great show.
I think it's done. I think it's been done for a long time. We'll just say that they're still making them.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
way, we're not as
I
old.
think they have like 18 seasons or something
A
like that.
ton, right? And I
Yeah.
could be missing out on some new episodes. I was gonna say like it sounds like this is all a lot of work, and it is, but it's also worth it. Don't try to convince yourself that these things aren't for you, right? Or this reflection isn't for you. This is the point of the show, but I want to highly encourage you to take what we're saying here and what David's been giving us today seriously and actually, learn how to. It's going to take a while, but learn how to reflect on these things. Learn, take that Clifton's strengths model. Ask your supervisor, or just go get one yourself. Like, start working on these things because it's yes, it is a lot of work. And I know as engineers, we all got a lot of work in front of us right now. We're dying to get off of whatever meeting we're on because it's worthless and we're going to go do our work, right? But I just highly encourage you to lift your head up and take the time. This is important stuff, and you'll start to see the benefits.
Yeah.
So
And another thing is we're not all the same. So if I need something that you don't need, sometimes I might feel, well, why do I need this? Like one of the best things I did was block off the first hour and a half of my day because I was in a culture where it felt like you had to be available to all people at all times, and first thing in the morning, I'm pretty productive, but I'm not really ready to talk. So I blocked off that first 90 minutes. Nobody cared, and I was a lot more productive. But sometimes we feel like there's a one size fits all. So like what you're saying, Jake, it's like, you know, it takes time. Figure out what you need, and the time's worth it.
Yeah. I actually block off a bit in the beginning and a bit at the end of the day for like just
Yeah.
sitting in front of the computer to get the emails, respond to the emails in the morning that were from either the previous day or overnight because I deal with suppliers overseas. And then at the end of the day, kind of do all my recap emails for that I need to get out for the day, right? And then I've also found that if you bias your meetings to one side or the other of the day, that helps a lot too, because you can just stay more focused on the individual tasks that you're working on, and then not have to like jump off in a meeting and go to another meeting and then try to get squeeze in 30 minutes of work, and that kind of thing. If you kind of block all your meetings in one section of the day, then you can just get in that mode of, okay, I'm going to be talking for a couple hours right now, so I'm just in this mode, and then I'll be exhausted at the end, but that's okay because I usually set mine at the end of the day. So I'm like, woof, I can just do my emails and I'm out. But in the beginning of the day, kind of like you, where I like to not be in a bunch of meetings and just focus on the work, etc.
Yeah. And another thing with all of this is that I talk about in the book is there really is no such thing as multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
We think about one
Yep.
thing at a time,
You're on the
and you
right
can't,
show.
Yeah.
yeah, you can't do multiple things. And I've heard people very proud of their multitasking ability. And I can't remember who said it, but he's like, you know, about 2% of people can multitask. And you ask people, and 98% of the people think they're part of the 2%, but really
That's right.
we can think of one thing at a time. And when we're trying to switch back and forth, we're making mistakes. We're like, all right, where did I leave off? And so the more focus we can give ourselves, like you're talking about, the better.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think people can
Steve,
just.
what was that quote?
What was that?
What was that quote? I don't want to be vulgar or anything, so this is a PG version.
Okay.
It's instead of screwing up multiple things at once, how about we focus on one thing at a time and do that one thing the best possible way,
Yeah.
and then move to the next thing. Right.
Yeah, that's great.
That's what I like to operate on, because like switching costs me a ton of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to, and I'll let it go, but I try to minimize how much I have to switch between tasks just over and over and over. It just costs me so much energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
I think people who think they're good multitaskers are just better at task switching.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really what it is.
Yeah. Some people are better at it than others, but I'm gonna say it's not gonna be that effective.
Mm-hmm.
And one more thing from the book, sometimes engineers are great idea people, and their ideas are nonstop. That's the case for me. And you might have this really great idea, but it's not the time. So keep track of it, write it down, get it put into a place. Again, I
Yeah.
really benefited from David Allen's Getting Things Done, and he created something called the Someday Maybe list. And so as we have these great ideas, it's not the time for it. It might be something it will be very impactful later. Keep track of it and review that Someday Maybe list. But sometimes we're in the middle of a project, we think of something else, or even we're in a meeting and somebody says something but it sparks a completely different idea. Just be sure to capture that somewhere where you can look at it later.
Yeah,
Don't let it get away.
That's been a game changer for me, and I know both Jake and I have our lists, lots and lots of lists of ideas. Or I have one of just all business ideas, which I'll probably never do 95% of them, but it's just ideas are like, oh, this is really cool. This would be this would make a ton of money, or this would solve this big problem, or whatever it is. And but you can't do all those things all at once. You'll never get anything done. So yeah, utilize the list, write those ideas down, and then when you need to do something, you want to move on to the next thing, then you can look at your list and just find out what is the what are you going to be good at, right? What will have a large impact, etc. And like we just had an episode that kind of goes over this concept, but just you use that list to find out what the best thing to do next is.
Yeah, especially if it's going to get in your way.
Yeah,
I'll put that in there. For me, it was get it out of my head, get it down on paper or on the computer or whatever, so that I don't have to think about it and keep managing the list, thinking that I'm forgetting things, all this mental bandwidth that I was using up just to maintain some sort of mental list. It's like, just write it down. And I think it was the coaching program that I was in, but he said, your brain is for producing ideas, strategy, coming up with the next direction, spitting out high impact outcomes, not managing lists and storing data. He's like, you got to get the storage out of there so you can make room for like doing the stuff that really matters. So that's a big one.
Yeah, it's powerful.
So before we wrap up our episode here with our usual questions, where can people follow you and find your podcast?
So quietandstrong.com has everything. So the podcast is there, social media, past, blog posts, all that kind of thing. There's the free way to take the a Myers-Briggs type test on there.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And then are you
Oh.
you open networker on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I can be found on LinkedIn too.
Awesome.
Is that test something that you came up with, or is that just something that you sponsor?
Yeah, it's something I sponsor.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, because usually you hit some sort of paywall when you're trying to like do these things.
Do you have any upcoming projects? I know you are working on another book, so you can tell us when you think that'll be out again.
Yeah. So hopefully this fall. And it's just really about a lot of the things that we're talking about, having your voice heard, being confident in public speaking, being confident in presentations, and just really understanding, hey, I have some gifts here. I have certain needs, I need this particular time alone, or, I need to prepare. And it's going to be along those lines of public speaking and those type of things.
Awesome. And of course, you already have a book that we've referenced, and that's Minding Your Time, and you can find that on Amazon, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
You can get a paperback or a Kindle.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to be ordering it myself, and because I have a couple team members that I'd like to give it to.
Very cool.
So yeah, as always on our guest episodes, we do have a couple standard questions we'd like to ask. I'll kick off with mine, and it's more of a high level thinking one. Weird, I know. And that is, what does being an impactful engineer mean to you?
Or how to be impactful?
Yeah, that works too. Yeah.
I think a lot of what we were talking about is really embracing your gifts, not comparing yourself to others, just really embracing who you are. What are my strengths? What am I really good at? And what do I need? And then also allowing other people to do the same, really trying to help them embrace their strengths and honor their needs that may be very different from yours.
Yeah, I love that, and I especially love the comparison to yourself thing. Because I think that's the best way to measure growth, right? You're not going to measure your growth against other people. You're going to measure it from who you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be a little bit of work to figure that out. And some people have, just through the years that I've been mentoring people, have stated that like the work should speak for itself, or I shouldn't have to do these things to be impactful. And I always invite people to kind of flip the script on that and switch their mindset that the system is not going to change. It's a huge thing that you would have to move. If it is required, consider doing it so that you can be impactful, so that you can have your work shown and your voice heard. And oftentimes the harder road is the one that you should go down, because it usually becomes the easy way after you've done the work. I know from this podcast, I've gained immense skill in public speaking. I used to be like, what is my voice going to sound like? What questions am I going to ask? Who cares about any of this? But then you just did the work and put it in and started doing episodes and felt like there was a reason behind what I was doing. And then eventually I got into a place where, I'm sure everybody on the call feels the same way. It's like now we can see the impact of creating the podcast and writing books and getting your voice out there. So highly encourage that. My question is action oriented, of course. And it's usually just, what is the one thing that the listener can do today when they turn the episode off, or get off the treadmill or whatever they're doing, that can take them in the direction of what we've been talking about? So if you are that introverted or quiet or engineer, what is the first step?
Yeah. And it really starts with self-awareness, and everybody's going to be on a different, people that are listening are going to be in a different part, where some people are going to be very self-aware. Some people haven't started that journey at all. So maybe stay on the treadmill and then listen to the Quiet and Strong podcast.
There you go.
There's a lot of episodes, with different topics: public speaking, networking, different things like that, marketing, all kinds of different topics. I mean, you could start with the first one.
There you go, and just binge the heck out of it.
Yeah.
It's part of why I started the podcast in the first place, is that I've just learned so much from even just listening, and it's my preferred method.
Yeah.
So burn some extra calories. Flip over to the show. Maybe make some room for cake or something. I don't know.
Awesome. Well, it has been fantastic having you on here, David. I really look forward to your next book coming out. And I, as we just said, I encourage all of our listeners to jump over to the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially if you resonated with this episode. You're going to resonate with all the episodes over there. So again, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you both. This has been great.
And if you learned something today, and I know you did, or think someone else needs to hear this point of view, please share the show. Give them a direct link. Just tell them the name of the show. We are on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. It's the best way that we can grow the podcast and continue to create value and impact for the engineering community.